Hi, everybody. This is Karen from AMP Global Youth. I'm here with Cathy Sun, yay, Cathy, who's a longtime activist and leader with us and has been active in all of the incredible and inspiring student mobilizations happening, well, spiking really in the past month since the tragedy in Parkland, Florida. So we've asked Cathy to share with us some of her experiences and tips for other student activists hoping to create change and inspire their peers and have conversations on this topic in their communities. So thank you, Cathy, for being here.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
So tell us where you're from and how old you are and just a little bit about you as just a person, a student.
Yeah, of course. So I live in Irvine, California right now. I go to University High School. I'm a senior and I'm currently 17.
That's great. Okay. And so in the past month since the tragedy in Parkland, there have been all of these inspiring mobilizations, and we should say students and communities have been speaking out about gun violence for years and decades. You know, this is not new, but there's certainly a surge of it we're seeing now. What have you seen at your school?
I've seen just incredible turnout. So we had a walkout on March 14th. So that was about a week ago, and we had 500 students show up. And that was completely incredible because we were expecting probably about 200 at most. So that was just the most amazing part to me. And I've just seen a lot more people bringing this issue up in conversations. So I really think that students are also changing the political climate and culture by having these conversations and really making it a point of focus.
That's great. And what was your role in the walkout? I understand that you had kind of a key organizational role in making it happen. What was your role and what did you do?
So my good friend and I right now, we kind of started this whole idea together. So we were having conversation about what happened in Parkland. And I just said, so there was a call for action on March 14, and I really think we should do something. And I'm not really concerned right now about how many people show up or if the administration would be okay with it, but I really just want to help in some way and help amplify the message because I think it's really important. And my friend completely agreed with me. So together we kind of reached out to about 20 more people and we started this Facebook group. And we figured like this would just be a planning group and then we would have maybe about 50, 100 students show up and that would be it. But that just completely grew and expanded organically. And now we had about 400 students join that planning group. So Reina and I, we kind of took on the helm as the lead organizers of this. And we just oversaw many aspects of organizing the walkout, which included everything from designing a huge banner to contacting and speaking with the administration and also talking to teachers and seeing if we can garner some of their support. And of course, also press outreach, reaching out to other local allied organizations. So there was a lot of planning and details that went into this. And my job was kind of just to oversee that. And there were a lot of students who very enthusiastically volunteered their time and resources. So we kind of had different students also take on different leadership roles.
That's great. So that's a really interesting final point. I think this idea of distributing the tasks and seeing yourself as a leader and that you're empowering others and encouraging others to step up is really necessary if you have a project or an action that has a ton of moving parts. That seems like that was your experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, Cathy, tell me more about what you had to do to make it happen. So you talked about signage, you know, like your banner, talking to the administration, talking to other schools and organizations, press outreach. What else was on like that master task list?
So I think the biggest thing was that we didn't just want to do what was the national call for action, 17 minutes of standing outside in solidarity with these victims. We wanted to make a larger statement. So we decided to plan a sit-in protest on our school campus. So there would not be like traffic safety concerns of hundreds of students. So that just made it a much more complicated process. So we had to plan, what would be a good location to fit like hundreds of students? How would that work? Would that obstruct cars coming into the school, going out of the school? And we had to have several meetings with our administration to work that out. And on their front, they also had to communicate with us about disciplinary consequences for organizing the sit-in protest, which actually lasted for about an hour that day, all in all. So there was a lot to be done. And in terms of just other tasks, we also wanted to make a public service announcement, a PSA video, just made by students that we would spread across social media. And of course, running social media, creating graphics, things like that also took time and a lot of support from students who just volunteered that. And besides that, we also set up booths at this walkout. So we didn't want students to just show up, take part in this walkout, take part in the sit-in protest, and then just go home and forget about the issue. We wanted students to make sure they would walk out and then keep moving, because that was the whole point of walking out. So we also set up these various booths, some of which were more informational, like here are some facts and statistics about your congressional representatives and their voting record on the NRA, their voting record with the NRA, and also we set up voter registration and pre-registration booths so people who are 16 and 17 years old could pre-register, and people who are 18 can make sure to register to vote in time for the midterms or the general elections.
I love this phrase you said, we want people to walk out and keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
That's a wonderful way to put it. So you gave people all of the next steps. I think that's a really critical part to an action or a rally is, where do you take it from here? Because now you're really fired up in the moment, you're here, you're speaking out, and how do we then engage medium and long term to make policy change and encourage continued cultural change and all of that. So it sounds like you had a fantastic list of things you were working through. Did you have any best planning tools? So you mentioned like a Facebook group. Did you have regular meetings? Did you have like an email chain or text chain, or like, is there anything you'd suggest that helped you manage all of these moving pieces?
Well, we did maintain a text chain, definitely. We used Messenger. So that was mostly just a small group of very committed students who were just in charge of various tasks and who could kind of direct all the other volunteers who were taking part. So I think that was extremely effective. And as a small group, we had a lot of in-person planning meetings, but we couldn't possibly have had, meetings with 400 people in our Facebook group. But we definitely communicated a lot of the messages through that Facebook group. And we also made a Facebook event. So for example, the day before, we just posted everywhere, hey, make sure you're wearing black and orange to show your solidarity and that you're taking part in the walkout. So things like that we could communicate. And also when we needed volunteers, for example, for our PSA video, we would put up a poll in the Facebook group and ask, hey, if you're interested in volunteering and taking part in the PSA video and maybe like having a speaking role in it, please vote on the times that would work for you, for filming, for helping out, things like that. So I think definitely having some way of communicating with people, the small group of people who are just in charge of leading and overseeing the whole event, but also having a larger group where you can communicate with students who have expressed interest in taking part and doing something to support would be very helpful.
Okay, that's great. It sounds like you had a million moving pieces, and I really admire how you organized and recruited people and kind of looked for help to make it all happen, because you needed that many things to happen. Mm-hmm. What were you most proud of at the end of all of this? It's not the end, but at the end of that moment, right. That first walkout.
I think what I was most proud of definitely was just the energy from all the students who were there, and the fact that we brought out 500 students, most of whom were probably, politically apathetic before this walkout. But since the walkout have gotten registered to vote, or are just more aware of what is happening, the situation, and what they can do to help make a difference, even if it's just by educating the people around them and, making sure that the issue doesn't fade into oblivion after every mass shooting. So I think that's what I was most proud of.
And what do you personally want to do next? Like, what's your next step from here? Where do you want to take it for you?
So I think at our school, we're definitely doing something on April 20th, which is the anniversary of the Columbine shooting. So we're definitely still going to organize students and make sure we keep that energy going and people don't forget about the issue when it comes time to show up in the polls. So I think that's definitely something that's on our minds. And then going forward, I think individually, I definitely want to remain an organizer, want to remain involved. So I'll definitely keep working on the issue however I can and encouraging people to get out the vote, GOTV. And I'm also right now working on campaigns on a local level. and helping to elect people that will actually support common sense gun control reform. So that's what I'm doing individually.
That's wonderful. Hey, one other question for you. You mentioned getting the press out. I know that's an area that's new for a lot of people. What did you do? What tips do you have for people for reaching out to the press about an event they might be organizing?
So what we did, it was pretty simple, pretty straightforward. We just compiled a spreadsheet of different local news sources, from KTLA to the Orange County Register to even the Los Angeles Times. So we just scoured online and we looked for contact information and we sent out emails and made a couple of phone calls to let people know this is what was happening. And we were very, very clear in our emails and our phone calls, the details of what would be happening during this walkout, what the purpose would be, how many people we anticipated, and where the location would be, things like that. And we actually didn't get any responses, so we weren't even sure if the press was going to show up, but they actually did on the day of the event, and they covered the whole thing, and we even got an interview afterwards. So that was kind of our strategy.
Okay, well, that sounds like it turned out well. And I know
Yeah.
you spoke to the press. Did you use any resources or tips for what to say? Like, what did you have talking points prepared, or how did you handle that?
We didn't really have any talking points prepared beforehand, but I think because we were all so involved, the answers kind of came to us naturally. Um, so I think it'd be a good idea to prepare talking points for the press if anyone is thinking of planning a walkout or some sort of a rally or event. But for us, we just didn't really think of that beforehand.
Yeah. No, it sounds like it. You know, you were so deep in the issue that you were ready to speak about it. And I'm sure it was really authentic you're doing so from the place that you were at, you know, in the middle of this walkout with all of your friends and classmates. And so, you know, that's probably better than anything that you could have prepared formally.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So, Cathy, last question. What advice do you have for students looking to organize something in April or just at any point on any issue? You know, what big lessons learned or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
wise knowledge would you pass on to other youth organizers?
Don't get discouraged. You may come across many challenges, difficulties, and maybe people not taking you seriously as a young organizer, as a high school student. But don't be discouraged because fighting for what's right is always worth it, and you are always making a greater change than you often realize. So definitely keep motivated, keep positive, believe in your own ability to create that change. And don't do this alone. Definitely find people who are equally motivated, who want to do something like you, or inspire others around you, and find a group of people who can work with you on organizing something. It's much easier as a team effort, and it would make a much greater impact when you have a group of people to rely on and support you.
That's great. That's such great advice. Well, thank you so much for all you did. And it's really inspiring. I was watching all of your actions on Facebook and was really just inspired and motivated by all you were doing. So thank you for sharing all of this knowledge. For those watching, we'll share some of the great links to the news story. I know Cathy's interviews online. We'll share that in the comments. And if you want to further invest in yourself as a leader and social change maker, remember we offer online and on-the-ground trainings. You can find those on our homepage, ampglobalyouth.org. But for now, we'll say a big thanks to Cathy. Keep it up, and we'll talk again soon.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, did she just disappear?